Virgo Rising, this is your outer planet horoscope for the next 2.5 years. Let's talk about the North Node and the South Node, because for Virgo Rising specifically, relationships have been a big fucking deal for you since January 2025. And the reason for this is because the South Node has been in Virgo, your first house, and the North Node has been in your seventh house of partnerships, Pisces, emotions. South Node is telling us karma, the things that we came into this life with, the things that are easy for us. And for a Virgo rising person, what's easy is process. What's easy is earth, things that are like solid and foundational and lacking of emotion, right? It's like perfectionism and being efficient and doing the next logical thing because it is a mutable sign and ruled by Mercury. Okay, so as the South Node entered your first house of self and identity, it's saying, yeah, well, you can't really show up to relationships like that. You can't logically think your way through a relationship. You have to get out of your head and release these old patterns that no longer fit where you're moving into. And your soul in your seventh house is saying we're evolving into more of an emotional state of like faith, of trust, of fluidity. And for Virgo rising, that was probably hella uncomfortable because that shows up in relationship dynamics of like your wounds, your patterns, where you overgive, where you overextend, where you try to fit perfectionism into an emotional ecosystem. And you've had to learn how to recalibrate, or you're about to learn how to recalibrate, which is a big emphasis of where you currently are. The other indication of this is that Saturn has been in your seventh house of relationships. So not only was the South Node in your first house saying this is the shit you need to release around these partnerships and relationships, and you're having people come into your life that reflect back where you're vibrationally needing to release things. You've also had serious ass Saturn going, follow the rules here, do right by people here. You know, like no shortcuts, you got to feel it. And that has been heavy on the relationship front. The South Node and the North Node are going to move in July. So this whole relationship, there's probably residue. And again, this is the node, the North Node and the South Node. So it has to do with the moon cycles and our internal infrastructure of how you were like dealing with that and being like, I want to say torn apart, but I feel like you've been through a lot when it comes to other people and relationships. So now Saturn is moving out of your seventh house into your eighth house, and there's going to be this sense of recalibration. It's going to help you understand the new psychology of who you are and create new boundaries. You're going to explore, you may get into things like astrology, things that kind of tap into a deeper sense of psychology, of internal infrastructure, of, you know, your internal restrictions. It's a healing point. It's a hidden house, and it is internal work. Saturn says this is where the work must be done now. So now that you've let people go and you've had all this reflective energy back to you from an outer world experience of other people, and that being a major catalyst for your growth, now Saturn in your eighth house is saying, now let's rebuild some of this from the inside out. Okay. Neptune is also in your eighth house. So your eighth house is Aries. And Neptune in your eighth house, Neptune's signature is to dissolve. And it is going to come and dissolve the old residue of the psychology and the things that you learned or thought up until this point about who you had to be, how you had to show up, you know, like how you had to give to other people, how you had to share your like resources and your energy. There could also be a major sense of like spiritual awakening going on in you with the eighth house being activated. We also have Jupiter that is going to move into your 12th house. And that is just a very healing, subconscious restructuring. So a lot of your healing and what you're going through for the next 2.5 years while Saturn is in the 8th house is your internal world. Okay. So look into that, find your chart, look into that. Know that Saturn is in your 8th house with Neptune. Saturn is saying this is where the work needs to be done. Neptune is saying, I'm going to help you dissolve and unlearn and be inspirational and have some creativity and explore the psychology and the frequencies and the energy of who you are now. So Pluto is in your 6th house. This is really important because your 6th house has to do with your health, your animals, your day-to-day life, your mundane task, how efficient you are, how you go about getting things done, your to-do list, that type of energy. And Pluto in your 6th house is there for the next 19 years. So like until 2044. But it's going to expose where you're burnt out. It's going to expose where you have opportunities to do better by your health. This could show up in the form of like disease or a diagnosis or something that you will be working through for the next like set of years in order to clear it out, right? And there's ways to expedite it. There's a lot of expedited energy right now. So I'm saying that, and I know that it's a 19-year transit, but it's always a beginning, middle, and end, right? It's not something, and it doesn't have to be like anything bad. It could just be a matter of you feeling like the way that you wake up and go about your task is now different because you don't have to know everything. Maybe that's the energy with the South Node coming out your 1st house. It's like, I don't really, like, I'm going to trust the process. I have more faith in things being okay without me having to be perfect or get that external validation. And I feel like that is going to be something that you work through. But you're going to restructure or you're going to heal unhealthy work cycles. You're going to heal unhealthy eating habits, and it's not going to feel good. So you're going to start to change in that area of life. Self-care could be a really big thing that you start to implement or that you feel like you're missing with Pluto in your 6th house. Same thing with like service to animals or getting into like some sort of, like giving back or volunteering. That could be really important. With Pluto in Aquarius of your 6th house, you could want to be somebody who like gives back and volunteers and like use your time effectively to help others. Pluto's signature energy is to transform. Pluto is saying, I'm going to transform. This area of your life is not going to be the same when I'm done here. But Pluto is slow and like not a boom, this thing's happening, boom, that it's more, you see it coming. It's very predictable type energy to me, even though you can't really know where you'll end up at the end of it, but it's not anything that's like it's so slow that you can kind of see it coming. All right, so now Uranus is in the 10th house of career. Uranus in your 10th house of career, public recognition, visibility is the highest house on the chart, so it's going to radically change. Uranus in Gemini is about our perception of who we have to be. So I feel like you, with Uranus in Gemini in your 10th house, you may leave jobs, you may pivot careers, you may realize that what you're doing is not really of service to who you are now, and you want to change that. You may become rebellious against the systems that you work in. You may not feel comfortable there anymore. You may feel like something has to give so that you can feel liberation and freedom and back in alignment with who you are now, right? So this is kind of what I'm feeling for. I feel like Uranus in Gemini or Uranus in your 10th house is going to create this restlessness in you, where you're like, I gotta get out of this. I don't feel good here anymore. So the overall theme for you is one that you're coming into this new energy post a bunch of relationship dynamic changes because of the North Node and the South Node, which has changed who you are to a more faithful, trusting person in all aspects, right? Because the 1st house is the self. So in all aspects that you approach something with, your faith and your belief is different. And now because of that, your health is going to change. How you show up in your everyday life is going to change. and how you show up in your career is going to adjust, because you were not the same person that you were before January 2025. The other thing that is really significant is that your 8th house and your 12th house, your 8th house has Saturn, your 12th house has Jupiter. So there is this element of healing going on, of recalibration, of things still coming up to the surface to go, damn, look at what you just went through. But you got to remove this thought process. You got to change this verbiage. You got to, like put some fluidity to this and do some of this. And then you're going to like continue to shift in these areas. But for the next foreseeable future, you're in this healing state of like readjusting, because you have now changed your internal infrastructure for how you approach new situations, people, relationships, and yourself. I love you. I hope that helps.